Thank you for joining us today. I am Bernadette McCormick. For those who do not know me, I am VP of NIRI Twin Cities Chapters programs, as well as Business Wire's regional manager. Wear lots of different hats around here. Thank you for joining us today. It's going to be a great session. I can see it and I can feel it now. Without further delay, Bob Kleiber. Bob is not a stranger to us. He's been around for many moons. I always tease Bob about this. I started Business Wire Minneapolis in 1993. Back then, Bob was spearheading a lot of initiatives, one of which was at Bemis Company. He's been in the corporate comm field for over 20 years. NCS, Digital River, Retech, you name it, it's from PR to IR. And now he'll be launching some real fun, exciting new project, and it's called, I want to say My Treasure Hunt, but it's really Mr. Treasure Hunt. Bob can give you a little soundbite on that when I turn the podium over to him, but without further delay, here's Bob.
Thanks, Berna, for the introduction. When she rattles off all the places I've worked, I know it sounds like I can't hold down a job, so I'm always concerned about that. My 2 seconds on Mr. Treasure Hunt, it's a business my brother started in San Francisco 15 years ago. It's a team building business. It's been phenomenally successful in the Bay Area. He has over 300 clients, including everybody who's anybody in technology in the Bay Area and big banks, law firms, consulting firms, et cetera. And I'll be launching it in the next month in the Twin Cities. It's an information-based team building opportunity where you follow clues to find information. The first one's built in the Twin Cities Skyways. You can't believe what the Twin Cities Skyway has to hold in terms of information that you have never paid any attention to probably as you've walked through them. There'll also be ones available in the art museums, eventually the Minnesota Zoo, Landscape Arboretum, et cetera. So we'll have one available soon for an area near you in St. Paul as well. So give me a shout and we'll hopefully take care of you. Again, I want to reiterate, thank you for attending today. We have a terrific panel. I think we'll have a lively discussion on social media, what it's doing to the news business. We have a great mixture of folks with print experience, online experience, digital, social media, et cetera, coming from a variety of perspectives. They've traveled the world to come here, and we're very, very pleased and appreciate their attendance, and again, appreciate your attendance. Let me briefly introduce each of them. You have their bios in front of you, so I don't want to spend a ton of time on that. I'll start closest to me with Todd Stone. Todd's been with the Star Tribune for 3 years, but that's only a fraction of his extensive career. He is in charge of overseeing business news coverage in online and print for the Star Tribune, so he can give us a great perspective on what's going on with Minneapolis' big newspaper. Next to him is Kaeti Hinck. Kaeti is in the pure digital world with MinnPost, has been there since 2010, and can help you get a perspective on what they're doing. Again, being in an all-digital world, she's responsible for the website and their interactive initiatives, so we'll get a great perspective from her. Next to Kaeti is Dirk DeYoung. Dirk has been with the Business Journal since before the turn of the century. I've always wanted to say that about somebody. Sorry, Dirk, I had to use it on you. Just makes me feel so old, you know, so experienced, I should say. And he's been editor since '99, and Dirk's been a real fixture in the business community here and in the news community in the Twin Cities for a long time. Finally, we have David Fondler, who's been with the Pioneer Press since 2002 when he joined as the business news editor. He's traveled the globe in not only the U.S. but has been all over. I was going to mention this about Dirk. He actually traveled the globe as well, having spent time in Fergus Falls, which I think is across the border, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, my wife is from Fergus Falls, so I get to tease endlessly about that town. But David has literally traveled the world, having spent time in Russia, Budapest, and Prague, as well as here in St. Paul. So we're delighted to have this crowd. So I'm going to start this off by basically asking each of the panelists to describe to what extent they've become, quote unquote, an online journalist, and how their job has become technology driven. And then, as a follow-on to that, describe if and to what extent, more likely rather than if, but to what extent social media has changed the way they report a story. Does it affect the way they report all their stories, most of their stories, some of their stories, or not very many stories? So it's a lot of questions. Hopefully they have a grip on that and can begin. So we're going to ask, we'll start with Todd and go ahead and fire away.
Well, thanks for having me here. Social media has kind of changed everything in a lot of ways. For reporters, you might cover an event this way now. You would go to it, you might tweet from the event, even write a blog post while you're there, send the blog post link to our online editors, and it would get posted on the homepage of our website. And that's before you've even thought about actually writing a full story that would end up in our print edition. And we do that because we can obviously reach so many more people that way. And as journalists, that's what it's all about. You want to create content that matters, and you want as many people to see it as possible. So social media gives us so many new pathways for doing that. On the flip side, there's a great transaction here. Readers get to engage us in direct ways of which we've never had before. And that allows us to learn so much more about the community around us. It kind of brings down that wall between us and the community. We're human beings, we can prove that, which is nice to be able to do by just even responding to a tweet or an email or comment on a blog post. So it's a transformative time for us. As journalists, it's a blast. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. It's fun, it makes our jobs more intriguing, and we learn a lot more each day because of it.
At MinnPost, as an entirely digital enterprise, social media is fundamental to how we work these days. It gives reporters access to a wider array of sources and tips, and as Todd was saying, it gives us a two-way street where there can be dialogue with our readers. We hear feedback. We're able to interact on a human level, which I think is essential. And each reporter can also cultivate their own network and kind of find their people and work within their various beats. And we also, like on the editorial side, we're all checking social media throughout the day. So it's become this really important tool for how we work. What was the other part of the question? I think that kind of gets at it.
Asked about to what extent you become an online journalist. That's what you've been from the get-go, and you've described how social media. So I think that's good for now.
All right.
Well, as a journalist who started his career before the turn of the century, I started as a print journalist where we worked with daily deadlines and pasted stories up with wax onto boards for a newspaper. Things have changed dramatically since then for me. Pretty much it's digital. Most of the time I start my morning at home on a computer editing our morning roundup, or now it's called Morning Edition email. That goes out at 7:30 every morning. So that's new. Been doing that for a few years. But we have become, at the Business Journal, a digital-first operation. All of our reporters now, we used to save stuff for the print edition. We don't do that anymore. It's all news right as we find out. Tweet it as fast as you can, get a story out, get a breaking news email out if it's a big deal, or at least it'll be out in our afternoon email. And our print then is not for breaking news. It was for deeper perspective, people, deep dives. We like to say in our company, which is broad, we have 43 business journals, either digitally or in print across the nation, that digital is for like the lean forward experience on your phone and your computer really quick, and the newspaper is for lean back, more, relax, get a deeper dive. So, but as far as social media is concerned, Twitter is great for tips. We gather a lot of news tips by just watching the Twitter stream. If something big is breaking, we can actually create a column on TweetDeck so we could see all the news, what people are saying about something. Like I said, we need to tweet quickly to be competitive. Of course, you have to get it right. You don't want to have an incorrect tweet. That happens sometimes. And there's other social media is useful as well. We had a unique story last week about some archivists laid off at Target, and were able to confirm their leaving via LinkedIn. So we didn't contact them directly by any other means except through LinkedIn. So that's a new way to find people. It's kind of an end run around the PR department, so you may not be too happy about that, but LinkedIn is useful for finding people who are working at different companies and possibly contacting them. But all of this doesn't change the basics of talking to people to get news as well and get more depth. Thanks.
Yeah, I would agree with everything they said. The Pioneer Press is under the umbrella of a company called Digital First Media, and that says it all, digital first. And that's in how we present our news. We go digital first, print second, or print once a day. So everything we know about, we put online, just about. And then a lot of things get online that don't even end up in the newspaper now. A different perspective on online, and Dirk talked about the evolution of technology and how we are now, it began with using typewriters and then wax and then computers and now the internet. In many ways, this hasn't made our jobs easier as you'd think it might. It made our jobs more challenging because we are constantly mining social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything for tidbits of news. And the challenge comes in what is news? Is every tweet a news story? How do we know if it's true? How do we know if it's false? It requires the same traditional reporting, talking to people, following up to make sure that it's news before we publish it and put our name on it and say this is true. I think this is something that all news generators, members of the media, have to be mindful of, that things that appear on social media are not necessarily news, even though they may seem juicy and they may seem like something that would attract readers to your site. You have to watch out for things like gossip and really check them out before you run with them and devote resources to following them. So that's one challenge that we face with social media, but I can't overstate the value of Twitter, for example, in providing us with story ideas and tidbits and things to chase. It's just a great tool for reporting. So is everything else that's out there. We take everything that comes in, we read it, we filter it out, we decide what's going to get in the paper, whether it comes via email, via social media, or whatever. And in the end, we produce a finished product throughout the day on our website and in our newspaper. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Great opening comments from everybody. And that your comments, David, lead to my next question perfectly, and I promise we didn't set this up. Has the evolution toward web, mobile, and social media changed how you like to be pitched story ideas from PR folks, company communications professionals, et cetera? What's different about the pitching process from where it was before we started worrying about social media, go back 10 years or so?
It's just become much more of a fire hose, I guess you could say. I must get 50 or 60 emails a day. Every one of them thinks that their story is the most important thing in the world. We should drop everything and do this interview with this executive because he's got an incredible insight. And I and the reporters I work with at the Pioneer Press really have to filter that stuff out and decide with every one of these emails, with every one of these tweets, with every one of these posts, or just a simple phone call to the newspaper, is this news? Is this something that's going to be interesting and new to our readers? Is this something that they're going to know about regardless of whether we write about it? Is it worth devoting resources to? Every one of these little things that come in have to go through that same criteria, that same question. And it's a very fast-paced judgment call that we have to make in deciding how and where and why we devote our resources toward chasing a story. At the end of the day, we still have a finite amount of space to fill in the paper. We can't put all the stories in we'd like to. The web is a little bit better in that regard because we basically have an infinite amount, as infinite as it can get, of constantly churning news stories onto the web. But it's also a question of resources, devoting reporting and photography toward chasing these items, or just putting them in. But that shouldn't discourage anybody. My thinking is the more we know, the better job we're going to do. So I appreciate every email I get from every source, whether it's a PR person or a reader or a news source like someone in the news. So.
And David used the word email a lot, and I'd have to agree. I'm trying to monitor Twitter a lot, but I miss it. But I do at least look at the subject line of every email before I delete it. So I do. I mean, email's the best way still. Email or phone calls. Social media is hit and miss, so it doesn't always get to me.
I think that there are both pros and cons with the wider variety of ways that you can now target the media. I think everybody's seen on Twitter the companies who find 50 news organizations and send the exact same tweet to all of them. And you look at their profile and it's just the exact same message to every single organization. And that's frankly idiotic, because with social media, we have this opportunity to actually investigate and research the people that you're targeting. You can find out what the reporter is interested in and who they are as a person and target more accurately and specifically. And so it's great in that way, and it's also really easy to make some dumb mistakes by just doing the scattershot method, which doesn't work. Like, you need to target people who are actually interested in what you're covering. And for us, I think another big thing is, like, if a company is doing good work and engaging with their customers, being transparent about the work they do, we're going to notice. Like, they don't need to send us a press release because we're going to find out from everybody else who's talking about it. And that's the best PR.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine for what you're trying to do to reach media, probably good old-fashioned, as what was just said earlier, email or phone call is the way to go. But at the same time, social media allows you to engage broader constituents in an immediate way. And that can be very valuable for what you do. And so in that line, and we're looking at those audiences the same way you are. You're looking to send a message or get information out. We're looking for good information to report on, right? So social media can work in that way, but if you've got a real story that you want a particular news organization and or a particular reporter to pursue, sending that person a tweet or even a direct message through Twitter probably isn't the most efficient way to go. Hopefully over time you've been able to, even if it's just an electronic relationship, if you will, got some sort of exchange of communication going that way. But for us, social media as an information tool, as a way to find news, to find information, is invaluable. So if you have information that you want the public to know about, use social media, get it out there. As a broader part of your mission, that works well, and we'll be looking too. But when you want to have that real direct one-on-one moment with media, probably more traditional ways are the best way to go.
I mean, at the end of the day, we still need to get checks from people in order to get money to pay bills, et cetera, at the corporate level and the organizations we're in. What kind of pressure are you feeling to generate page traffic, views, whatever, however it's being measured, for your news sites, your online news sites? And what is that pressure doing to you in terms of how you now report the news, cover the news, assign resources, et cetera?
I don't know if I'd use the word pressure. It's just part of our mission now. We want to reach more people. We want to engage a wider and wider audience. It makes sense for us as journalists. It also makes sense for us as a business. So for us, it's just use these new tools. Use Twitter, use Facebook, use LinkedIn. It's great. We have seen a lot of positive results from it. I'm going to try to remember these numbers correctly. We have, between our staff and company accounts on Twitter, we have more than 500,000 Twitter followers. We have 24,000 fans on our main Facebook page. Through social media, we get about 2 million page views a month on our website. That's impressive audience right there, and we want to see that grow. It's a validation of the work we're doing if that audience continues to grow, and it of course makes sense from a business point of view. But for us, it's just about, it's fundamental as journalists. We want to find stories that matter, and we want to reach people with those stories. So I wouldn't call it pressure. It's a good thing, but it would be scary if we saw our digital audience diminishing, if we saw a shrinking of engagement from our readers through social media. We're seeing the opposite, thank goodness, but that's where we would feel pressure if we ever saw a contraction in some way.
Traffic remains relatively important to us, just in terms of how page views will drive ad sales and revenue in that way. But we're not really going after the ever-widening audience. We're going after the right audience. And we want a niche in that way. We want to find the people who are our readers. And as a nonprofit, that's sort of, we're more mission-driven. So the way social media can be really helpful in that regard is we're able to build relationships with people who are deeply invested in our mission and our brand, and then from there convert them to becoming members. And that's ultimately more important to us than page views, because I think page views is sort of a dying metric. That's not going to be a sustainable business model, because if everybody's going after the 17 ways Miley Cyrus looks like this cat sort of traffic, if everybody's doing that, then you need to offer a value that's different, and that's what we're trying to do. So we're trying, social media is great for us in being able to find and cultivate those people who are deeply invested in what we're doing and what we're doing differently.
Well, we constantly have goals to meet as far as growth in page views and unique visitors and overall growth in our emails. We've been consistently above 1 million page views for 2 years now per month, and our email afternoon is more than 16,000 subscribers to that. And so we've had a lot of success, but we're owned by American City Business Journals out of Charlotte, and they set, they have ambitious goals. Not only do we sell advertising for our digital presence locally, we sell national advertising out of our corporate offices in Charlotte and New York, and those areas are booming, and they're actually so successful at selling advertising that they want more inventory. And where do they get more inventory? Well, we have to get more page views, and they want us to do more videos too. The demand for videos is very strong, and the ad sales for videos are there's a lot of potential there. So we are working on how to do more videos, and we get videos from different sources. We have Bloomberg. We can use Bloomberg videos. And we shoot our own videos, and if appropriate, we can borrow a video from some other source if we can get that on our site. So
I'd agree with what everyone else has said so far. We, at the Pioneer Press, I've never really felt a lot of pressure personally or on our staff to get more page views or to keep score, say how it is. We know that page views and newspaper circulation drive advertising revenue, and it makes our product more saleable to advertisers who want to pay money to have people view their ads. But from the newsroom, where we generate the news, or it comes from us, we just want to get as much of it out there as possible, have it as new and as unique as possible, and constantly be churning that page, constantly be putting fresh headlines up there, constantly asking ourselves, is this new? Is this something that's going to get people to click on it? Is this something that people are going to email this link to other people? Is this going to show up in search engines? All of those things are important to us because we, like Todd says, our mission is how we see it, and our mission is to get as much news to as many people as possible because we're natural-born communicators, and that's what we do. If that generates revenue for the paper, that's good for me, that's good for everybody who works at the paper, it's good for the paper, and it keeps us alive. Like Bob said, you have to pay the bills, but the revenue stream that the paper earns, so far anyway, and I haven't seen any indications it's going to change, has been completely separate from the operation of running the newsroom and getting news out there for people to read. That's what we do in my part of the operation, is we do journalism, whether it's online or in the paper.
Do you see opportunities, or do you see it inevitably happening that you're going to start to form alliances or relationships, cooperation agreements, whatever, in ways that may not have been thought of a few years ago? The one that pops to mind immediately is Carol Levin partnering with NPR to create content that both outlets, for lack of a better term, use. Do you sense that kind of thing, as this push towards more digitalization, et cetera, happens, are you looking into that kind of thing? And I'm not looking for specifics, but just kind of more philosophically, does this have to happen? Do we need to keep pushing the envelope on that?
Well, I think it's a great idea. If you could find online sources or technology, companies that are developing new technologies to partner with a newspaper like the Pioneer Press to enhance our product, or whether those technologies or whatever are generated in-house, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I'm not on that side of, that would be a decision that our corporation would make, whether we'd want to partner with another corporation to enhance our product and enhance their product. But if they asked my opinion, I'd say it's a great idea.
I don't think it's anything new. I know some other markets in our chain have actually partnered with TV stations on reporting stories. We have a partnership with Fox 9, where one of our broadcaster reporter, John Baumhoff, goes on the air every Friday morning really early to talk about what's in our paper or what we are doing online that week. He's also on WCCO AM every morning at 8:45. So we have those kind of partnerships, and we've had other partnerships through the years with other media. Just to, we get the word out of what we're reporting, and those stations get some content that's different than they're providing themselves. But, we'd be open to different partnerships locally, and I mentioned Bloomberg. Nationally, we have a partnership with Bloomberg where we get to run online any of their photos or videos. So that's helping bolster our content on the national front.
Yeah, we have a lot of partnerships with other local media organizations, both radio and TV, and other print publications too, where we'll publish each other's content. Yeah, it's been helpful for us. Just we're a smaller organization, so building exposure and also having more content to have on our site. And as we're growing, I think partnership has been a great way for us to do that.
I've been in several markets where I've seen TV, newspapers have good relationships and share content in different ways, report in different ways together. I don't think digital is necessarily putting any pressure on us to do partnerships more. In fact, for the Star Tribune, we'd be very cautious in the sense that, part of our mission and part of our business model is to create unique content that you can't get elsewhere. That's part of where we think we will create long-term value that can be part of a successful business model. So so on one sense, there could be some value in partnerships because good journalism sometimes happens that way. And that would never be anything we would want to close the door on. But in the sense of what we're doing as a company and what we're trying to accomplish as a long-term, hopefully continuing to grow company, I don't think digital is pressuring us to suddenly partner with other organizations to add more content to feed the beast, so to speak.
Okay. Back on the topic specifically of social media, can you just give us a couple of maybe must-dos and maybe never-dos that you would recommend we take to heart around social media and the use of social media, either for the companies we work for, the companies that we're consulting for, or providing services for?
One little thing, if you're using your Twitter account to engage your constituencies, whether it's other business partners or media or whatnot, keep those Twitter feeds more professional than personal. Sometimes I will have followed somebody who I've gotten good information from in the past, only to find out that one tweet was really an outlier, and that most of the other times I'm reading about, that person's pet or something. So I might unfollow that person pretty quickly. It doesn't mean you can't ever post a personal tweet. I don't mean to suggest that. And of course, a lot of people will have a professional Twitter account and then a personal one. So that's certainly an option too. As far as social media, it really just comes down to who you're trying to reach. And that's probably very organization specific. With us, fundamentals are still the key. Be specific, be precise, if you start there, you're in a good place. We are everywhere. We are using Twitter a lot as a reporting tool. I can tell you that right now. Facebook is valuable for us too in different ways, and especially when it comes to engagement. If we want to get out into the conversation where it's actually happening, Facebook is a great a means to do that. But if you're not active on Twitter, definitely in a professional way, get active on Twitter. It definitely starts there.
For a do, well, it's kind of a don't. Don't be stupid. Use common sense. I mean, I think it's so important to be a human being. It's social for a reason. I like reading your pet tweets, but be mindful and thoughtful of what you're representing, because the Library of Congress is archiving everything we post.
So is the NSA.
Yeah, no pressure, but I think you want to be careful about not feeding the trolls. It's a difference between criticism and thoughtful criticism that you can respond to and actually have a conversation about, and people who are just trying to tear you down. And especially when brands start engaging the trolls, you can get into some really dangerous territory, and that's where a lot of people have had their big kind of social media meltdowns. And I do think if you make a mistake, whether using a company account or your own, and own up to it quickly with transparency, apologize clearly. Silence or even backpedaling or getting defensive is the worst thing you can do, because it'll just compound the damage that you're doing. And I think, as a lot of smaller companies especially, they feel like they have to do everything and get on every single network and have a presence on Pinterest and LinkedIn and whatever the new one is. But I think it's probably better for most people to choose one or two networks to focus on, really build the community on that network, know who they are, be able to talk to them and engage with people in a more personal level. And along those lines also, define your goals, know why you're doing it at all, and choose a metric to measure those goals. Because there needs to be a reason for using it beyond just like, it's fun. That can be a reason too, like that can be a goal, but we find it valuable to measure and to actually see how things are working. And I guess finally, think before you retweet. As David was saying before, we can't throw journalistic integrity or just integrity in general out the window on social media. Like, we need to actually apply our values and think twice and not get caught up in the storm.
I don't have a lot of don'ts except don't be boring. I think be active, be fun. Some of my favorite social media from the corporate world is the stuff coming out right now from General Mills and Target that's linked to their blogs that they've started doing that are consumer facing, and their social media that comes out of that promotes what's on their blogs. I mean, some really interesting stories about these companies that they're actually writing themselves. And that's really cool stuff to look at. I would say another do is monitor all the streams coming out of your company, so you know what people are saying about your own company, good or bad, and what people outside are saying about your company. You probably do that already, but I'd say be interactive with us. If we do a story about you, retweet it. That'd be great. But also, I asked around the newsroom what other things should I share, and they said, well, why not if you could make your company's Twitter handle really easy to find, like on your homepage, and put it in your press releases and stuff, because we like to. We find it valuable for us to put your Twitter handle or the company that we're tweeting about into the tweet. It's just good social activity because it raises the visibility, and maybe we'll get retweeted, and you get the visibility as well. And so interactive is good practice as well. Thanks.
All I would recognize is that what you have to do, especially if you're on a corporate level of communications, is recognize that this is a new realm for you guys, in that you can't really control all of the no longer can you control all of the messages that are coming out of your company, because if it's bad news, any one of your employees can tweet it, and then we'll find out about it, and then we'll start calling you up to confirm it, to verify it, especially if it's a big story, but even if it's a little story. And in that regard, you have to be aware that once the message is out there, and once journalists, either newspaper or TV or online, find out about it and want to pursue it, you then have to respond accordingly. You have to provide us with access. You have to give us the information, at least your company's side of the information, and you have to not lie to us. And I say that to anybody from public relations who asks me what should or we should not be doing with regards to, say, a negative story about our company. And bottom line is, don't lie. And the next step is provide us with access, and we'll make every effort to be fair.
Are there certain types of content that only end up in the online version of a particular publication on their website versus in the print version? And then secondly, is there, when are we going to get to the point where the executives are going to be as happy to see their quotes in the online version as they are in the print version? And what's it going to take to get us there?
To the first question, I'd say, I don't know, because every story is unique and different and judged on its merits. So I don't really have, personally as an editor, I don't really have a criteria other than a very general criteria of, is it new, is it different, does it touch a lot of people's lives, is it local in the case of the Pioneer Press, because that's a franchise that we can't get anywhere else, and that's I guess the fourth one is this unique, or is this information that people already know about or can get anywhere else? If it's compelling enough to meet all of those criteria, it will appear both in print and online. But yeah, we obviously have much more resources and opportunities to put things online than we have to get things in the paper. But if it's news, it'll get in both places. And as to the second question, as to what corporate executives would prefer as far as the publicity that they get for themselves and their companies, that I can't say. I mean, I think maybe it's a cultural thing, and maybe as younger executives take over and older executives retire, younger executives recognize that online is as valid a news source and as valid a presentation of the news as print is. I guess there is a certain permanency about print. You can hold it in your hand, you can frame it and put it on the wall, that you can't necessarily get online unless you print out, say, a page view. But from my perspective is they're one and the same. It's all news, and it's all out there for people to read. And maybe it's up to the people who work with those executives to convince them of that it's all news and it's all good for them to have their name in, if it's good news, I guess.
As I said before, we're digital first with news, so news stories go online first. Our opportunities in print are more people profiles. We have in weekly edition, we have the FaceTime, a Q&A with somebody that we think our readers will want to meet, so pretty high level for that. So we're always looking for people to do that Q&A with, and a photo, and small business profiles. We're always looking for small business profiles, ideas of growing companies in our area. Those are basically the areas in print, but I know there's still this idea that we want to be in print, not in digital, but look at the math at the moment for us. The math is that with edition sales, we have 13,000 subscribers to our weekly print edition. Our daily email has 16,000 subscribers. So do the math, where do they want to be? I think digital is just as strong as print these days.
If the executive is smart, they know that online they're going to have a much wider audience and the potential to reach that many more people beyond just the print subscription numbers.
Yeah, both are essential for your line of work. If you can get into a newspaper with the circulation size of a Pioneer Press or a Star Tribune, you're doing pretty well there too. One thing I have noticed a shift in recent years in terms of how digital is regarded. More and more when we've made a mistake in a story, whether it be a political story or business story, often the representative for that politician or company, they're very concerned about the digital version of the story being corrected, and they're not as worried about the print version of a print correction being posted. And I think that's a sign of just how readership is evolving a little bit, because that print correction, while we will always do, because it sets the record straight, is independent of the story itself. where that's the beauty of a digital story. It can continue to evolve. It can be updated and changed. So it is funny how where I could say 5 years ago, that same scenario, if I assured that person, oh, we're going to correct it online too, they would have been like, oh, yeah, fine, but make sure it's in the paper. Now it's almost the other way around.
How does the role of the wire service fit in this brave new world?
Well, for us, it's still very important. We feel like the only way we can cover the Twin Cities and Minnesota and the Midwest and do that effectively is show our place in the world. And obviously, we can't open a bureau in Beijing, though I pitched it once. Actually, it was in Malaysia, but that's another story. So that is a big part of what we still need, that content. We still need that reporting. But I will tell you that we don't lean on it nearly as much as we used to. For me, it's as much another source of information that I might look at and say, okay, that's a very interesting story by the New York Times. What did I learn from it that might inform a different story that would serve our readers more directly in an effective way? At the same time, like we saw with the shutdown and what went on with the debt ceiling debate, there was some coverage that we just did not have the resources to provide, but we still wanted to deliver to our readers online and in print. So the wire services were very important for us. I mean, we did some of our own reporting, but to be able to have that and complemented by what was happening, by what the AP was producing, New York Times, Bloomberg, and others, was very important.
What about corporations disseminating their news over the wires?
Well, that's important too. We have a Bloomberg machine, which we use a lot to search companies, their releases, their filings. We do that every day. So no, that content is still very important electronically. And in fact, I don't have a reporter that doesn't have just a whole buffet of searches already set up on his or her computer, where they are finding corporate news in different avenues, either directly from the company itself or through niche publications that are also producing digital content, whether it be on blogs or just their digital publication. So.
Yeah, we still have a lot of reporters using the wire service, in part because so many of our resources are focused on local reporting. We need that, like Todd was saying, the work that people are doing on the national level, and also just being able to find information about what's happening with businesses locally and nationally. We rely on it quite a bit still.
As for the corporate wire services like Business Wire, that's the bread and butter of what we need to watch that. I mean, we'd cover a lot of stuff with our reporters going out trying to get exclusive breaking news, but the bread and butter stuff we need to cover, we still need to watch Business Wire, PR Newswire. As far as wire services, I mentioned Bloomberg. We have their photos and videos, and we're rapidly increasing our use of national content from our reporter in Washington. Covered the dramatics last night in Congress. He was there and filing stuff late into the evening. And all that stuff now flows automatically to our website and every other website in our chain. And then we're adding how-to content. We actually, the guy in charge nationally of our how-to content is named Ed Steik. He used to be our digital editor here in Minneapolis, and he still works in our newsroom because his kid is still going to high school. He'll move to Charlotte next year. But he's actually looking for how-to content for the national feed. So if anyone is interested in that, let me know.
Wire services are essential to what we do, not only for national news out of Washington, but for corporate news too. We get a lot of information that way. And also, like Todd said, for stories that we find on the wires that we might not necessarily use in our paper, but it might springboard an idea that, okay, this is a story about a trend that's happening elsewhere in the country. Let's localize it for whether this is happening here. This is interesting to our readers. But like I said before, we get, you're talking about Business Wire or PR News Wire, it all flows in like a fire hose, whether it's an AP story, whether it's a Business Wire story, whether it's a Bloomberg story, and then we decide what we want to use online, what we want to use in the paper, what we want to rewrite, what we want to pursue, and without it, we would be really hampered. I think all of that information, the more information we get into the newsroom, the better for our product and the better for our readers.
how can we partner with news organizations? How can we get a contributed column or a reoccurring guest slot? And I'm just curious to hear what your litmus test for a company that maybe has a founder or someone who has a point of view that they want to share with your readers. What would make you interested in pursuing that?
At a previous newspaper I worked at, we did have a series of guest columns where we had kind of a group of corporate executives who were allowed to write a column for the paper on a semi-weekly basis. It went through a rotating thing, and I thought that was good content for a reader. That was before online. That was back in the 90s. The columns were kind of hard to edit for style. They kind of, corporate executives have a lot of skills. I don't judge them, but there's a certain style that journalists write in that you kind of have to coach people into doing. It's kind of a craft, and one of the rules was it couldn't be promotional. It couldn't be a column that promoted your company over your competitor, or it couldn't be like a free ad. So what we coached these executives into writing about was trends that they saw in their industry, maybe commenting on news stories that occurred that touched their industry that they could offer a perspective on. But that hasn't come up in my experience at the Pioneer Press at all, the idea of doing something like that. And if that were to be pitched to me, I would consult with my editor, my boss, Mike Burbach, to see about the possibility of getting that in, and then he and I together would form a criteria as if we wanted to pursue that as a project, would form a criteria as to what it would take to get that something like that in the paper or online.
Similar for me, we used to have columns, guest columns on basically advice, how-to information with kind of the same ground rules in our paper, but as you know, the size of the paper had to shrink. We just got rid of it. It was a lot of work to make them interesting, and it was a lot of work to wade through them, and we just decided not to do that. At some point, we might bring such things back as guest blogs, but not at the moment. As I mentioned, Ed Steik, now our national person who's in charge of the national how-to content, which is streaming on all of our websites nationwide. He is working with independent columnists and consultants and people who have a talent for writing and giving good advice to business people, and he's looking for content as well. Thanks.
If the writing is high quality and offers something of value to our readers, we have something called Minnesota Blog Cabin, and so we have sort of a curated list of Minnesota blogs. Either they could be company blogs, they're often just individuals, and we go through that every day and highlight one post and publish it on our site. So that's one way that you might be able to get your company's writing featured. We also have, on the advertising side, we have something called real-time ads, and if you buy the position, you get to change the messaging in it anytime you want, and oftentimes people use it to post the latest link to their company blog. And so that's sort of an ever-changing piece of content on our homepage that a lot of people have found useful.
I agree with a lot of what everyone just said here. It's tricky because you don't want to imply in any way that there's a partnership in terms of, you know, that might be cross some ethical boundaries. What we have done instead is tried to create a lot. We want that executive perspective in the paper and online. We think that's valuable. We want to engage the corporate community in the same way we engage a whole host of constituencies in business. But what we've done is we have the business forum feature that's in our Monday business section, and it's online as well, so that if there is a CEO or a CFO or a COO who says, I've got something to say about an issue and it's important, you know, we have a place for it. And we also have about 3 or 4 different Q&A devices that are in different parts of the paper and that also publish online that we think kind of is a nice spigot for that kind of pressure when we're seeing that kind of request and content that we think can be useful to our readers, but how do we present it in a way that still keeps that separation between church and state, if you will, between who we cover and the decisions we make that we want to be independent and credible for our readership. So I can't picture just a classic, hey, let's work on something together with a company. But if you're representing a company that has something to say and isn't just trying to sell something as what was said before, we'll listen. And we might have a counteroffer on how to get that information out there. But we'll definitely listen.
There is certainly, obviously blogs have exploded, and there's beginning to be a little bit of blur between stories and the author being kind of the focus. In other words, if it appears on a blog, it's more about the author than it necessarily is about the story. What are you seeing in that area? Is there interest from any of your reporters in doing blogs more aggressively? Does that create a problem for you in terms of their role then as a reporter? And maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, we have many reporters who are blogging. In business, we have an economics blog. We have a commercial real estate and residential real estate blog called Just Listed, among others. We have plans to have other reporters launch blogs in the near future. We just started a live stream blog at startribune.com/business. Check it out. But it's really cool. We're live streaming throughout the day, just different reporters contributing what they see going on in the news to just give us that much more immediacy online. But the thing with blogs is that I think one of the things that got distorted in the message to journalists was suddenly it became this notion that it was the personality over the content. I remember talking to some young journalists who were just coming out of college, and they were asking me, how do I establish my brand? And I was like, you're 21, you don't have one, and you don't get one. But if you want one eventually, you do good work and you do it for a long time. That's your brand. So to your point, the question as far as personality, we tell our reporters, use blogs to tell readers something else that matters to them that's on your beat. It's not necessarily opinion. It can be a little more informal, and that's and engaging in that respect, and it should be. That's what makes blogs fun. I read a lot of blogs. I have favorite bloggers, and what they do effectively isn't, being snarky or just having opinion for an opinion. They're telling me something. So reporters kind of at the Star Tribune, we try to follow that same mandate. Have good blogs, and what makes a good blog? Good content. Tell people what's going on. If you just wrote a story, tell them about what it was like. If you just did a story about interviewing Governor Mark Dayton, on your blog, yeah, you might be able to tell your reader about the story about how you were 15 minutes late. You can make it a little more personal. But in the end, more often than not, it's about telling them something else that we couldn't tell through another device online.
We often encourage our writers to have a voice, but that comes with their decades of experience. They know what they're talking about, and they're still doing quality journalism. So they can take a little bit more of an informal tone in the way that they're writing, but it's not going to be about them. We want it to be good content and offer something of value to the reader. And so, there's a difference between having some voice, providing some sort of insider information about how the story was reported and things like that is really valuable to a reader, and just narcissism.
For the Business Journal, the reporters are really the core, one of the core pillars of our new strategy and our new look. In our print edition, we now have reporter pages, and we are encouraging them to blog, and that's not blogging about their pets. It's using, like was said, using their expertise. What does the news mean? Using their expertise. We don't need to go out. Our Sam Black, our real estate reporter, who's been doing that for 12 years, doesn't need to go out and talk to some broker to get a quote about what it means. He knows what it means, and our readers know what it means. So he's supposed to tell readers what it means, and that's the strategy that we're using going forward.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what was just said. I don't think there's really any place except for columnists and maybe critics, I don't think there's any place in the paper for reporters' personalities or brands. Very few people, I think, read the bylines in the paper. Reporters might not like that fact, but it's true. The bylines are there if you want to read them. And blogs can work to provide, like other people said, kind of the story behind the story. This was what you're not going to read in the paper. This is a little tidbit that I encountered. And we found, I think, at the Pioneer Press that the specialty blogs on various beats are the most popular and the easiest for reporters to feed, particularly in sports, politics. In the business section, we have a personal technology writer who has a very successful blog that's got some following around the country. But for general news, it can become somewhat of a chore if you require reporters to blog about what they cover in addition to writing their news stories. It becomes a beast that they have to feed, and it becomes kind of a headache for everybody. I would encourage reporters who want to blog to go ahead, and we could set it up for them on our website, but I wouldn't make it a pillar of our news product online.
Okay. Well, that wraps it up. I wanted to give the panelists a chance to, or give you guys a chance to chat a little bit with them informally after it's over. So we'll wrap up the formal part of the meeting. And I do want to thank our panelists today. I thought it was very, very informative, extremely helpful and knowledgeable, great information and suggestions. So I'd like to round of applause for our panelists today.